I'm Ginny Metheral, and this is my channel here, all about everything to do with being a witch. And today's video is all about something that not many people know much about, and that is ley lines. But just before we get into that video, if you haven't already, it'd be really great if you could do some subscribing, liking, sharing, ticking notification bells, all that sort of YouTube stuff. I need you to do that so I can carry on making some videos. Anyway, now I've got that bit out of the way, let's get straight into this video. What is a ley line? Well, a ley line is a magical energy force that crisscrosses over the land, creating this sort of grid of highways. Nobody really knows what they are. A bit like gravity. No one really knows what gravity is. I mean, they can measure it, they can test it, they know how much mass will produce how much gravity. They don't actually know what gravity is. That's very much like ley lines. You know, we can sort of test it, but we don't know what they are, scientifically that is, of which, obviously, I know all about them, this is why I'm telling you. Ley lines were first put together as a sort of scientific theory by this gentleman called Alfred Watkins in the 1920s. And he went out for a walk and he was doing some archaeology and a bit of, looking about, whatever he was doing, I'm not quite sure. And he was walking up through some hills and he turned around to look behind him and he saw what looked like a chain of fairy lights, as he later told his family, crossing the land. And from this, he then came up with this theory of ley lines, and he called them ley lines because there were so many villages that crossed a ley line that had ley in its name. Although later he decided to drop the name ley and call them archaic tracks. You can read all about it in his book, which I'll put a link to in the description below. So the ancient Britons understood ley lines far better than we ever did, and this can be shown by how many henges are all over the country. Not only are henges situated on what we believe to be ley lines, but they're also situated on sort of wells where the energy bubbles up through the earth. If you ever go to Dartmoor in southwest England, there are plenty of henges, which are stone circles, right next to each other. So you'll have one stone circle here and then one stone circle just here. And that's because they're sitting on a well of ley line energy. Other stone circles obviously sit in the crisscross of where the ley lines go, and these there's no more famous than a Stonehenge, of course. We believe Stonehenge to be built on a point where at least 4 ley lines cross each other, so it's a huge mecca of energy and earth magic. Stonehenge was astoundingly and miraculously, in my opinion, built not just on this ley line point, but it was also built to align with the summer solstice. So the sun on Midsummer's Eve rises behind the Heelstone, which is at the entrance to Stonehenge, and then as the sun rises, the rays of the light of the sun falls directly into the very centre, the epicentre of Stonehenge. It really is quite a sight to see on Midsummer's morning. You should go there. It's about the only time that you're allowed actually within the circle of the henge, because most of the time you're kept apart from it. You can just view it from a distance. I mean, Stonehenge is magnificent in so many ways. It was built almost 5,000, if not over 5,000 years ago, and we really don't understand how it was built. I mean, not only does it align itself with these ley lines, it aligns itself with the midsummer sun and some other ley lines. So it's lined geographically with Avebury Tor and Old Sarum. It's pretty amazing, really, Stonehenge. Go and look at it if you're ever in Wiltshire. It really is worth it. Ley lines were known by a variety of names. The Irish, for example, called them Funerary Pathways, and they have a lot of traditional stories, and their oral tradition tells of how people maybe built a house along a fairy pathway, and then the most dreadful occurrences happened to them, and terrible disasters befell them, until they had to vacate the house, much to the fairies' happiness, and then the house fell down, or some such thing, however the story followed on. These fairy pathways obviously crisscross Ireland, and you don't want to go near them. They also had fairy mounds and fairy wells, which I think is the same as what the ancient Britons had when they would build a henge around a well of this natural energy. Other traditions, especially bizarrely Christian traditions, call them funerary pathways, funerary, if I can say that properly. So this is where spirits of the dead would flow through these ley lines and use them as a pathway to get about and, go and do some haunting or whatever they were up to. There's a lot of traditions, therefore, with the funerary procession to stop this happening so that the spirits couldn't escape and, go and mess about in the countryside, terrorising the natives. For example, you weren't allowed to carry your coffin over a bridge of water. If you passed a cairn of stones, you would add stones to that cairn. Otherwise, it would offend the spirit and the spirit would start walking about. These things go on, but essentially the Catholics took over the ley lines from the ancient Britons themselves and converted it to their own needs, which is what they pretty much did wherever they went. Ley lines are in every culture throughout the world. For example, Australian Aboriginals had ley lines called turingas. I apologise if I've got the spelling wrong on that or the pronunciation wrong on that. These were pathways for the Aboriginal gods to cross through the outback and through their lands. The ancient Chinese, I'm sure you've all heard of feng shui. Well, they had dragon currents, and these are essentially ley lines for which would produce energies and negative and good into your feng shui area that you were feng shuiing, and you had to be very careful of them. The ancient Incas they were called I'm not sure how to pronounce this, and I've written it down for you on the screen because I've no idea. They used to sacrifice babies, they think, at certain points along the ley lines where they had their sort of shrines, I suppose they were, and these all led into a big convergence of ley lines at Machu Picchu, which I'm sure many of you have heard of and been to. It's a fascinating subject of ley lines throughout history in the world. There's one that's very strong that travels right the way through Europe, from the tip of England right down to the bottom of the Mediterranean and connecting all those European nations. It's a lovely, energetic feeling, especially now we've just had Brexit, so we are connected to Europe. We can't help it. It's part of our culture. One of the most famous ley lines in the UK is the St Michael's ley line. St Michael's ley line is called because it follows the sun on May the 8th, which is St Michael's Festival of Spring. So on May the 8th, the sun rises just above the English coastline in Norfolk and then follows this ley line all the way across down to the southwest of England, where it sets at St Michael's Mount. Along the ley line edges, there is plenty of shrines, all called St Michael. This is a great example of the Catholic tradition taking over from the ancient Britons and annexing their sacred sites and building churches and whatever to try and control the population. Well, maybe that's too strong a word for people, but I tend to think that that's what they did. It happened with the Incas. The Roman Catholics over there would take over their shrines and build their churches, and it's just the way of the world. The Romans did it too. It's how you conquer a nation, really, politically, religiously. That's how you do it, how you control people. Old Sarum, which is on this St Michael's line, is a very famous example of this. So you can see that it was one of the earliest settlements in the UK. But the Catholics came along and built a lovely church right in the middle of it, saying, bang, it's ours now, and called it St Michael's. So what of the modern witch? And would she use a ley line, or he for that matter? Well, yes, you can, but they are very dangerous because what ley lines are huge energetic forces. And with those energetic forces, you can get good energy and you can get negative energy. And you don't really ever know what to expect. It can be either one or the other. You can have a cancer or you can have a cure. So they are slightly dangerous. So I used to live in a house called Hillcrest, which was on the cross of two ley lines. And some pretty dreadful and terrible things happened in that house, actually. And after a lot of investigation with my coven, we were able to clear and cleanse and, get rid of the stuff that's going on, ancient spells, you name it. I'm not quite sure that I'm ready to tell this story to YouTube. It's quite a long one. It's quite way out, actually, this story. And you might think I'm insane. If you want to know this story, put it in the comments and I'll make a video on it. But I'm not sure I want to tell you now. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's video about ley lines. And if you did, let me know in the comments below your thoughts. If you want to know about that rather scary story that I've got about ley lines, put it in the comments below and I'll make a video on it. In the meantime, do subscribe and like and share this with your friends and tell people about me, and hopefully I'll see you in the next